If you're new to business, one of the most important things you need to learn now is how to create a basic professional estimate. So, whether you're brand new to business or you've had some unprofitable jobs as a result of underestimating your time and materials, keep watching to the end of this video because I'm about to lay the foundation for your company to win quality clients and ensure you don't lose money on a job again. So here's an estimate that I made with Joist software, and I marked it up with colored boxes here to show you very clearly what should appear at the top of every estimate. So if you're not using a template or an estimating app like Joist and you're making your own estimate on a word processor, feel free to screenshot any part of this. So at the top of your estimate should obviously read estimate to tell the client that's what it is. It should have the client's name, address, and phone number here at the very least. It should include your company's full legal name, your company address, and your contact information, as well as an optional logo. Also at the top, you'll want to put an estimate reference number of some sort so you can track multiple estimates over time. You'll want to put the date of the estimate and perhaps your business's tax number. Down here in the body of the estimate will be where you put the description of the services you plan to offer and how much each of them is going to cost. And at the bottom, you'll put your subtotal, tax estimate, and total. Also at the bottom of your estimate, you're going to want to put any terms of payment, such as 50% due upfront to cover materials and 50% due upon project completion, or if there are any terms of payment at all, you'll want to list them there so it's clear. At our company, we don't charge a deposit unless the bill is over a certain amount, but you can decide what you're going to do at your business. Now, when you're creating the description of the tasks you plan to do for the customer, you want to add some details. Joist allows you to put the title of the task and then a description below, and I would recommend going into some level of detail to show that you've at least acknowledged what the instructions were and that you're planning to follow the client's instructions to the letter. So in this case, the client had some very specific instructions about how they wanted their tray ceiling to be painted with 2 different sheens of paint. And so we wanted to make sure that they knew that we heard them when they made those detailed instructions. And so we included that down here. Now in this particular estimate, we separated items by task. In this case, it's the tray ceiling painting here, and then a wood shelving project here. As you can see, we included some details about the dimensions of the project and what all we were going to do. Now, in this particular estimate, we have chosen to separate the materials from the labor costs so that there's full transparency in how much of this estimate is going to be materials and how much is going to be labor. Now, as a customer, if I have a long list of items, I do appreciate having more of a breakdown of what each service is going to cost, as opposed to an all-in-one number for everything on my list. That way, as a client, I can pick and choose which services I want. You're not stuck going back and forth with the client being like, okay, well, how much will it be if I take off this item and that item? Then you as the business owner have to go back and rework your estimate again, when it's just kind of simpler for you and less time consuming to just list everything out and say how much you're going to charge for each job. Now, not all companies do it this way. It is okay to combine the two amounts here into one and just give a number for the full job. It's up to you as the business owner which method suits you. Either way you do it, it is a good idea to list out what materials are included with your price and which ones are not. Because as you can see here, we've written that the client is to provide the desired paint. In cases where the client does not have the paint and we have to supply it, we need to account for our time for going to the paint store and finding the right color and color matching and all that stuff. So we would have to add on something onto the estimate to account for that. And that's why it's important to specify in the estimate which is which. Are we supplying the materials or is the customer? So now let's talk about some top things to keep in mind before you press send. This estimate will be your client's first impression of your company. So make sure your estimate looks like it was prepared with a decent level of thought. A good quality client, which is the type of client that most businesses should be trying to get, are the clients who will prioritize quality service and good communication over the cheapest price. So a good quality client is going to be looking to make sure that you plan to follow their instructions. And they probably will notice if you spell their name wrong or their address wrong. So make sure you give it a good once over before you send it out, and make sure that you run it through a spell check if grammar and spelling is not your forte. Another extra touch you can add to the bottom of your estimate is to attach a photo of whatever it is you're going to repair, or a rendering of what you're going to be installing. It's not a must do, it's just an extra touch that can make your estimate stand out and look like you put in a little bit of extra effort. So if you're just starting out and you don't want to get involved in a subscription yet, just open up an invoice template on Microsoft Word, or if you're an Apple user, on the Numbers app, which is a free download. Open one of those up, change the title from invoice to estimate, and fill everything out. Now, if you do want to get into an estimating app like Joist, Joist does offer some additional business features that might be helpful to you, like collecting online payments and revenue tracking and business reports. So if your business is at the point where you're looking for something like that, then check out the link below to consider Joist as an option. Joist is what I currently use for estimating and invoicing, and I use it because I like the attractive style and features of their middle tier subscription. They also track your estimate acceptance rate, which can be a helpful insight for someone who's new to business especially. Now, when you're pricing out your services, there are some things to consider before arriving at your final price, and don't overlook these. Anything that costs your business time or money needs to be built into your estimates. Things like your shopping time for materials, as I mentioned earlier. Things like your travel time and your fuel to get to and from the job and the store. Time to create this estimate and the invoice that will follow. And the time you took to research the material prices for the project that you're going to be doing. And you also need to consider this job's share of your business's liability insurance, business licensing fees, banking fees, home office expenses, etc. Another thing you need to consider is if the job will require multiple follow-up visits, like say for a drywall repair job, where you have to patch, let dry, sand, patch, let dry. These not so obvious expenses could add up so much that you don't even turn a profit after doing the job. So make sure all of those items are considered and included in the price that you charge. If it seems like a lot, don't worry. You're going to get better at this with time and with experience. When you're pricing your time, you need to get out of the mindset of charging what you earned as an employee doing the same job. So if you used to work for $25 an hour as a laborer, you will not be profitable charging that in your own business. And why won't you be profitable? It's because you are not accounting for your direct expenses and your indirect company expenses when you're charging your labor rate only. So let's pretend that you decided to charge $25 an hour for, say, a job that's going to take you 4 hours. How much would you walk away with when you completed that job? Well, let's consider that maybe it took you $15 in fuel to get to the job and back, and to get to the store and back to gather your supplies. And when broken down by job, maybe your liability insurance costs $5 per job, your cell phone costs $5 per job, your advertising costs $5 per job, your uniform and footwear, your tool replacements, your bookkeeping, and your bank fees and subscriptions. All those things I mentioned just added up to $50. So if you're charging $25 an hour for a 4-hour job and you've made $100, then really you've only made $50, which means you've only actually earned $12.50 an hour. Now, I don't know about you, but I didn't go into business and risk my savings and my family's stability for $12.50 an hour. So you need to be charging a rate that compensates you for your time and your expenses and generates a profit on top of all of that for the business. Now, I know I've gone down the rabbit hole of how much to charge per hour, but many service companies don't charge by the hour. They charge by the market value of the job in their local area. And the market value means what people in your area are commonly willing to pay for that service. So our company does a combination of hourly rate and market value depending on the task. But as a handyman business, if you take a TV mounting project, for example, if your labor rate is $80 per hour and it took you an hour to mount that TV, you would get $80. But if you are charging a market rate for that TV mounting service, then you're probably going to be actually charging in the neighborhood of $150 to $200 depending on your area. And this is when the experience factor comes in. This is not something you'll know right away. You have to do a bit of research over time, and you should be continuously checking in your area to make sure that your labor rate isn't far below the market rate for the jobs that you do. Now, it's okay to use the price per job model. You should still have in the back of your mind an amount that you should be walking away with every time per hour as an absolute minimum. But if you find that the market value of that job or task falls below that minimum labor rate, you might opt not to take that type of job anymore. Now, if you are brand new, there is nothing wrong with charging by the hour instead of by the job, especially if you're not sure what to charge. I actually would maybe even recommend that in the beginning you charge by the hour until you know how long things actually take you to do and until you learn more about what people are willing to pay in your marketplace. Now, it's a really good idea to start to develop a price list over time. You can edit this list and raise or lower the price as you see the marketplace shifting or as your customers react to your pricing. But you should continuously keep and develop a list that will be your consistent charge for common services. And the reason why this is important is because it saves time for you when it comes time to make an estimate. Yes, estimates are time consuming because you have to do a lot of research to figure out how to price things right so that you'll be profitable and so that your client will get value and to convince your client that your services are worth the cost. But the more you have pre-figured out, the more time you're going to save yourself. It's a little trickier to keep a price list for materials because the price of materials changes. I would recommend jumping on HomeDepot.com or Amazon if you're buying materials for a handyman type service. And if you're building an estimate, you should be checking back in pretty regularly to make sure that you're keeping up on the current pricing of the materials that you're going to need. Now, if you have found yourself in the position where you've estimated way too low and the job took way longer than you thought it was going to take, and you felt like you just worked for free, hey, we've been there too. It happens, especially at the beginning. Don't be too hard on yourself. Take it as a learning experience. Consider it tuition for business school. Some of these things you're only going to learn on the job. It's okay. Keep that experience right in the front of your mind for next time you're building an estimate, and that is not going to happen again. So recently I needed a project done by an outside company, and so I reached out to a few companies in my local area for estimates and received a few back. And so I want to show you two of them so you can see the difference between a pretty good estimate and a kind of bad estimate. So here's a good estimate. So it had their logo here, it had their company name, it had my information here, the date that they sent me the estimate, their estimate number, they named the project, they gave some details about what I was asking for. They also included this line that said, detailed measurements are noted on the attached renderings. So they provided me with a rendering, which was a drawing of what they planned to build, and they included the dimensions on that. They included some information on what all they were going to add, like a toe kick, a molding, fillers, and the base cabinets I was asking for. Here's the price for the total. At the bottom, you'll see there's some terms of payment. So they want a 70% payment when they come to measure the area, and then the rest will be due once the product was delivered. It says here what is not included. Countertops are not included. So overall, as a customer, I felt like, okay, they understood the assignment, they gave me a drawing, they gave me the dimensions, they told me their price, and they made it very clear when the money is due and what all they're planning to do. Now let's look at the bad estimate I received. Now I recognize this invoice as an invoice that was prepared using Joist, and there's nothing wrong with the layout or anything, but as you can see, it's far less detailed. They did get this right. They put their company logo here. However, they did not fill out the information for their company. So this default Acme Co. appeared on their company estimate. Acme Co. is not the name of their company, but for some reason it appears here because they didn't take the time to fill out the template properly. Their company address, however, was here, and their phone number and email address, which is fine. It was prepared for me. My first and last name was spelled wrong. There was no contact information for me on here. They did provide an estimate number and a date, which is fine. Down here in the description, it doesn't even say anywhere that I'm asking for 3 cabinets to be made. It does say the type of cabinets that I wanted. It says the color. It does say that it does not include installation, which is a detail that I did instruct on. It does have some payment terms here, but it's kind of lumped in with the description of the service. As you can see, the price is significantly lower than the other one. I believe the other one was $5,000 and something. This one is $1,760. Now, I will say that yes, it is tempting to go for the far, far cheaper price. It's about less than a third of the price of the other company. But there is some hesitation on my part because the trust factor is not here. Why is it not here? Well, they spelled my name wrong. I'm not offended by that, and that's okay. It's not a big deal. But this is in a way like a little contract. And when I see that my instructions are not even reflected in the contract, I'm hesitant to sign this. And down here, it asks me for a signature. Again, my name is spelled wrong, where it asks me for my signature, and their company name is wrong. So if we have an agreement, who's to say that he'll just say, well, like, I'm not Acme Co. And who's to say that, well, I never agreed to build you 3 cabinets. It doesn't say anything here about that. So there's a trust factor missing here. I don't have a lot of confidence that this person knows what they are doing. They might be the most amazing cabinet maker and a skilled craftsman, but their business skills are lacking, and that makes me a little bit worried when I'm going to be spending thousands on a project that is going to be going in my home. So when it came to that project, I ended up choosing a company that was more in the middle price-wise, but they also had a good estimate with all the details I wanted and a rendering. And so I think that's a good guideline for us to follow, that if you're priced too cheaply, it actually might make you look bad. And so I hope that you can see from this video that some of the details that you put in, the extra effort that you put into your estimate is what is going to build the trust that is going to make someone want to give you a chance, even if you don't have the cheapest price. So if you received value from this video today, go ahead and hit the like button. It helps me reach more entrepreneurs out there who might need this information. Also, if you want more videos like this to come up in your algorithms, then hit the subscribe button. It's free. Also, go ahead and interact with me in the comments. I answer any comments that I receive. And the whole point of my channel is to help other entrepreneurs like me to learn and grow. So feel free to share your resources with me. I'll share mine with you. And yeah, thanks for coming by today, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.